Welcome, fellow dreamer. Tonight, I invite you on a quiet, contemplative journey, not to ancient temples or distant empires, but to a place where silence often speaks louder than words, the everyday life of a citizen in North Korea. Together, we'll walk through a single day, from morning rituals under watchful portraits to the long shadows of evening shaped by routine, loyalty, and quiet resilience. This is not a story of politics or judgment, but of human endurance and quiet strength in one of the world's most closed and mysterious societies. As always, this journey is offered gently to soothe your mind, ease your thoughts, and guide you softly toward rest. So before we begin, take a moment to dim the lights, find a comfortable place, and let the sound of this story carry you. I'd love to know, where in the world are you listening from tonight? Let me know in the comments below. It's always humbling to see how these quiet stories connect us across time and borders. And if you find comfort in these reflective journeys, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell icon so you can return whenever you need a calm place to rest. Now, take a deep breath, close your eyes, and let us step gently into the quiet world of a North Korean citizen. One day, one breath, one story at a time. You wake before the sun rises, not because of an alarm, but because you've trained yourself to rise early. Electricity is unreliable, so clocks don't always work, and your body has learned the rhythm of life without modern timekeepers. Outside, the narrow concrete corridors of your apartment complex are silent, save for the soft shuffling of your neighbors preparing for the day. Your home, if you can call it that, is a two-room apartment in a weather-stained gray building, one of many that line the outskirts of the city. It was assigned to your family by the state decades ago. There's no hot water, no heating in winter, and no air conditioning in summer. Sometimes the lights flicker on in the morning for an hour or two, but not today. You'll wash your face with cold water from a basin, boil rice, if you have it, over a charcoal stove, and dress quickly. But before anything else, you bow. In the main room of your apartment, two portraits stare down at you from the wall. President Kim Il-sung and General Kim Jong-il. You've been told since childhood that they are more than leaders. They are the eternal president and the dear general, the fathers of the nation. Their portraits are polished every day. You take a soft cloth and clean the glass carefully, ensuring not even a speck of dust remains. It isn't just about respect, it's also about fear. You've heard stories of people being reported for smudged frames, for neglecting their duty to honor the leaders. The local Inminbon leader, a neighborhood surveillance coordinator, might come knocking at any time. Everyone is part of this informal watch system. Neighbors report neighbors. Co-workers report co-workers. Sometimes even children report their parents. You don't know who's listening, so you keep your head down, your movements precise, your expressions guarded. The only sound in the room comes from the radio box mounted on the wall. It's government-issued and permanently fixed to one frequency. You can't turn it off, only lower the volume. Every home has one. It begins broadcasting at dawn, patriotic music, national slogans, the morning news. There are updates about the Supreme Leader's most recent activities, announcements about factory productivity, and reminders about ideological duties. Today's news praises a newly built greenhouse in South Hwanghae Province, opened under the direct guidance of the Supreme Leader. A gift to the people, the announcer says. You're not sure you'll ever see it, but you nod silently to yourself. Out loud, You say nothing. Your mother is already up, crouched near the floor-level stove. She's trying to start a fire with damp scraps of wood and a bit of paper. You both saved some cornmeal from yesterday, enough for porridge. It's not much, but it's warm and better than nothing. Food is never guaranteed. The public distribution system is supposed to provide rations, but they haven't come in weeks. Many people depend on the market stalls that operate illegally or semi-legally in the alleys behind the main roads. You ate better as a child, or at least you remember it that way. Back then, state rations arrived more regularly. But after the arduous march in the 1990s, the famine that killed hundreds of thousands, things changed. The government said it was the fault of the Americans and the imperialists. People whispered different reasons: policy failures, isolation, corruption. Either way, hunger became normal. After you eat, you change into your uniform, dark trousers and a clean white shirt. You attach the red loyalty badge to your chest, a small metal pin featuring the smiling face of Kim Il-sung. Everyone wears one. To forget it would mean suspicion, perhaps even punishment. Your badge is slightly chipped at the edge, but still gleams in the morning light. Before leaving, you double-check the house. The portraits are clean, the stove is out, the radio is turned low. Your mother reminds you not to speak too freely today. A colleague was reprimanded last week for making a careless comment. You nod again. On the street, the city feels quiet but busy. People walk briskly, heads down. A group of school children marches past in uniform, singing songs of loyalty. Soldiers stand at intersections, some young, some hardened with age, rifles slung casually over their shoulders. Propaganda posters line the walls, some new, some faded, calling on citizens to increase productivity, defend the nation, and follow the supreme leader's wisdom. You pass by a mural of Kim Jong-un with a child in his arms, smiling down at workers in a factory. The caption reads, "Let us always live in the warm embrace of the Marshal." You pause for a moment, long enough to be seen paying respect, but not long enough to draw attention. Near the bus stop, you see a group gathered for a Sangwell Chonghua, a mandatory daily group discussion and self-criticism session. You recognize the leader from your work unit. These meetings are part of life here. You've participated in hundreds, maybe thousands. You listen, you nod, you repeat the slogans. Each day, someone stands and confesses a minor ideological fault. Being late to work, not studying the supreme leader's writings thoroughly, or failing to show enough revolutionary enthusiasm. It's not about actual guilt, it's about ritual, a show of loyalty. You've had to stand and do the same more than once. Sometimes you wonder if others feel the same way you do, tired, cautious, quietly aching for something different. But you would never ask. Even your closest friend could be an informant. In school, you were taught that loyalty to the state was the highest virtue. You were told that even parents who disobey the law must be reported. You've seen it happen. And so you continue. You board the crowded bus, holding tightly to the railing as it lurches forward. Outside the windows, life looks normal. Children walking, carts rolling past, the occasional flag fluttering in the breeze. But you know what lies beneath the surface: the fear, the silence, the unspoken thoughts carried like secrets in the eyes of others. Still, the day has only begun. You've done everything right so far. You've honored the leaders, eaten what little you could, dressed correctly, and spoken no dangerous words. That's what survival looks like here. Not just obedience, but performance. And now you head to work. Not a job you chose, but one assigned to you by the state. You tighten your grip on your satchel and stare out the window, past the slogans and murals, as the city of Chongjin rolls past in grayscale silence. The bus rattles and bumps along cracked roads, packed shoulder to shoulder with passengers in silence. Most are heading to state factories or collective farms, others to government offices. The vehicle smells faintly of sweat, smoke, and worn fabric. No one speaks unless necessary, and if they do, they speak in quiet, coded ways, careful never to criticize, never to question. You keep your face neutral and your thoughts quieter still. Your assigned job is at a textile mill on the edge of the city. You didn't choose it. No one really does. After school, your career path was determined by the government, based partly on your grades, partly on your family's songbun, your social classification. That invisible label follows you everywhere. It defines whether you can live in Pyongyang or only in the provinces, whether you get a decent job or a menial one, whether you're trusted or watched. Your family's songbun is considered wavering. You don't fully know why. Perhaps it's something from your grandfather's past. Maybe he came from the south during the war, or owned land before the revolution. The details are always murky, but the consequences are clear. You'll never be a cadre or work in an office in Pyongyang, but you remind yourself others have it worse. The lowest class, hostile, are often sent to the countryside, or worse, to labor camps. You've learned not to ask questions. You arrive at the factory just after sunrise. The building is old, gray, and boxy, a relic of the Soviet era. Inside, rows of sewing machines line the floor, and the air smells of oil and dust. You've worked here for years, long enough to know the rhythm of the day before the shift manager says a word. There's a brief political meeting to start the morning, the Jengshi Sengwell, or political life session. You stand in formation with your co-workers as the foreman reads from a booklet of the supreme leader's speeches. Today's lesson is about self-reliance, Juki. You've memorized the word since childhood. It means solving problems without help from outsiders, building strength from within. It's a noble idea in theory. In practice, it means that your factory runs on outdated machines that break often without spare parts, and that you make do with what little is available. When you ask for help, you're told true revolutionaries fix their own problems. After the session, you begin your shift. Your machine works, mostly. The belt skips occasionally, and you have to press your foot pedal carefully to avoid jams. The lights flicker sometimes, and power cuts are common, especially in the winter. When that happens, work just stops until the power returns. There are no explanations. You don't ask for any. The work is repetitive, but you do it well, not because it earns you much. The factory wages are barely enough to buy a few kilograms of rice on the black market, but because mistakes can be dangerous, not just for your record, but for your reputation. If you seem lazy or disloyal, it's noted. Everything is watched. Everything is written down. You know the unit leader keeps track of each worker's political attitude and work ethic. It's all written into your internal file, part of a lifelong dossier maintained by the government. You don't know exactly what's in it, but you know it affects whether you get travel permits, whether your children can go to a good school, or whether you'll be called in for questioning someday. You work with discipline, eyes lowered, lips sealed. Around mid-morning, there's a short break. Some workers eat a small snack, a piece of corn cake, a boiled potato, maybe a spoonful of kimchi. You saved a hard biscuit wrapped in cloth, given to you by your mother the night before. You eat quickly and quietly. Conversation is careful, always. You know some of your coworkers have families in China or South Korea, but that's not something anyone says out loud. Foreign connections are dangerous. Even admitting to listening to South Korean music can land someone in a prison camp. You've heard stories of people disappearing overnight, neighbors, classmates, even relatives. You don't ask what happened to them. There's a woman who works near you. Her brother defected years ago. She's never said it herself, but others whisper it when she's not around. Because of that, she'll never be promoted. She's been stuck in the same role for a decade. You catch her eyes sometimes, and in them you see a sadness that you recognize, but you never speak of it. You both know better. As the afternoon drags on, the factory grows hotter. In summer, the windows are opened to let in the breeze, but all it really does is stir the dust. In winter, you wear 2 coats and gloves if you're lucky. There's no central heating. You once saw a worker collapse from the cold. They carried her outside and told the rest of you to keep going. Today, like most days, there's a quota to meet, a target number of garments. If the unit doesn't meet it, you all attend a criticism session after work. These meetings are meant to foster collective accountability, but mostly they foster fear. If one worker fails, everyone is punished. It keeps you on edge. Occasionally, you hear rumors about workers in special zones, places near the Chinese border, or in export factories, earning real money. Some even get paid in foreign currency. But those jobs are reserved for people with strong songbun or party connections. You've never seen it for yourself. It might be real. It might be just another myth. At the end of your shift, the factory whistle blows. You stand again, line up, and listen to the unit leader give a final briefing. Praise is rare. Criticism is expected. Today, he warns that someone in your group has been lagging behind in revolutionary enthusiasm. He doesn't say who. Everyone feels the warning like a needle behind the ribs. You collect your things and step outside. The sun is already low in the sky. You feel tired, but not just from the work, from the weight of vigilance, of silence, of never truly being at rest. There's a heaviness that settles on you every day. You've learned to carry it the way others carry tools or bundles of wood, quietly, without complaint. As you walk home, you think of the life that might have been, a different job, a different place, a world where your work could mean something more than survival. But dreams like that are dangerous. You tuck them away like contraband, hidden deep within, where no one can see. And as you step into your apartment, passing once again beneath the watchful gaze of the portraits, you prepare to begin again. Because here, work is not just labor, it is obedience. And obedience is life. The walk home for lunch is short but heavy. Your steps are tired, and your stomach aches from emptiness more than effort. In the distance, loudspeakers hum with patriotic music, the kind you've heard since childhood, with lyrics praising sacrifice, unity, and the eternal leadership of the Supreme Commander. The melody never changes. Sometimes, it blends so completely into the air around you that you forget it's even there. But the words always land. You hear them whether you want to or not. At the edge of the street, you pass a group of children reciting slogans outside a school. Their teachers watch, eyes sharp, smiles fixed. A moment of enthusiasm, too little or too much, might be noted. Everyone learns early to perform loyalty with balance. Even children. You reach your apartment building and climb the familiar stairs to your floor. The hallway smells like boiled cabbage again. Your mother is waiting inside, seated cross-legged on the floor mat near the stove. She looks tired. Her cheeks are slightly sunken. You notice she's laid out 2 small bowls, each containing a scoop of steamed cornmeal and some pickled radish. That's all for today. There's no rice. It's too expensive now, and the market prices have risen again after last month's crackdowns. You sit down across from her, legs crossed, and try not to finish the bowl too fast. You've learned to eat slowly, not just out of habit, but out of necessity. Hunger is a constant you've grown used to, not starvation. Not the kind your grandfather described during the arduous march, but a low, gnawing emptiness that lives in your gut day after day. Your mother says little, neither do you. During meals, silence is safest. Words can linger, and in a place like this, even simple opinions can turn dangerous. You remember your father once made an offhand comment about shortages, muttering something about how life seemed better when Kim Il-sung was alive. He didn't say it loudly, he didn't say it often, but someone heard, someone reported it. After that, he was summoned by the local security office and never spoke in front of the family again. He kept his eyes on the floor. He stopped asking questions. He died 2 years ago, quietly, without protest. When you finish your food, you help your mother clean up. There's no running water today. You take the dishes to the large ceramic basin in the corner and rinse them with what's left in the bucket. The water had to be carried up this morning from the public pump 2 streets away. You're careful with every drop. As you prepare to return to work, your mother reminds you not to forget the meeting this afternoon. The WUI, a mandatory group loyalty session at your workplace. It happens every few days, sometimes more. Attendance is not optional. Everyone is expected to share something, a thought, a story, an example of wrong thinking they corrected in themselves. On the way back to the factory, you pass a small alley behind a line of market stalls. The Jangmadang, the unofficial street markets, are technically illegal but tolerated when convenient. Vendors here sell things that don't officially exist. South Korean soap operas on USB sticks, Chinese instant noodles, used clothing, homemade medicine. Everything is watched, and punishment can be harsh if the state decides to crack down. But the people keep coming. You've bought a few things here yourself, once trading a pair of work gloves for a pack of foreign cigarettes. You didn't smoke them, just kept them hidden in case you ever needed to barter again. Back at the factory, the workers gather in the largest room. A faded banner above the wall reads, "Let us become human bombs, devoted to the respected supreme leader." You've read it 1,000 times. The red letters are peeling slightly now. No one dares take it down. The meeting begins with a recitation of slogans. You say the words in rhythm with everyone else. Long live the Workers' Party of Korea. Long live socialist victory. You keep your voice strong, your expression firm. Cameras aren't always present, but informants are. You never know who will report a lukewarm chant. After the opening statements, the session turns to the usual self-reflection portion. One by one, workers stand and confess small failings, arriving 5 minutes late, failing to memorize the Supreme Leader's newest speech, feeling frustrated, but correcting their thoughts through study. You've heard many of these before. The ritual is the same: confession, correction, loyalty. When your turn comes, You stand slowly, bow slightly, and offer something safe. You say that last week you noticed yourself working with less energy, but that reading the Marshal's address on labor dignity reminded you to stay vigilant. You say you're grateful for the chance to improve. Everyone nods. The leader praises your honesty. You sit down. You feel nothing, no guilt, no pride, only relief. You've survived another round. After the meeting ends, the work resumes, slower now. The afternoon sun streams in through the dirty windows, illuminating particles of dust that hang in the air like smoke. Your fingers ache from the morning's work, but you keep going. You glance at the clock, 2 more hours. During a lull in the noise, the woman next to you, the one whose brother disappeared, leans slightly in your direction. Heard the train from Pyongyang was delayed again, she whispers, just above the hum of the machines. They say the cadres couldn't get their imports. You don't respond. You don't even nod. You keep your eyes forward and hands steady, but the comment stays in your mind. A whisper like that could mean nothing or everything. The rest of the day passes without incident. You avoid attention. You meet your quota. You recite your lines. In this place, loyalty is not just a feeling, it's a behavior, a performance. One you must give even when your mind wanders, even when you feel the doubt creeping in. You've long since learned how to separate your inner world from your outer one. On the outside, you smile when expected, chant when required, and praise when prompted. On the inside, you think of your father's silence, your mother's tired eyes, your own fleeting dreams. At the final bell, you gather your things once more. As you exit the factory, you hear the faint echo of a loudspeaker broadcasting another update. Our dear Marshal visited a steel plant yesterday and declared the nation's future is brighter than ever. You whisper the words to yourself as you walk home, not because you believe them, but because you must never forget how to say them. When you arrive home from work, the apartment is quiet. Your mother is preparing a thin soup from wild greens she gathered near the hills outside the city. There's no meat, there rarely is, but she found a few slices of dried tofu in the bottom of an old tin, enough to flavor the broth. It will stretch just far enough for dinner. Your son sits cross-legged on the floor near the window, flipping through his school book. He's 7 years old. He started primary school this year. You watch him for a moment before you speak. He's murmuring lines to himself, memorizing them, his lips moving in rhythm with a phrase you already know well. Our respected Marshal Kim Jong-un is the son of the 21st century. You say his name gently, and he looks up. His eyes are bright, his cheeks thinner than you'd like. You ask him about school, and he tells you they learned a new song today. Without prompting, he sings it for you, a cheerful melody about tanks and rifles, about crushing the American enemy and defending the dignity of the homeland. He smiles as he sings, proud to show you. He doesn't understand what the words mean. Not yet, but the pride in his voice is real. You smile back and nod, because that's what you're supposed to do. Inside, your chest tightens. When you were his age, you sang the same kinds of songs. You remember lining up in the schoolyard in your navy blue uniform and red scarf, saluting the flag and shouting oaths of loyalty to the supreme leader. You didn't question it. No one did. Even now, you sometimes catch yourself humming those tunes when you're alone. Education in the DPRK isn't just about reading and math. It's about molding the mind. From the first day of school, Children are taught to revere the Kim family as gods among men. Every textbook begins with their biographies. Every classroom has the mandatory portraits. Every subject, even arithmetic, is woven with patriotic slogans. You remember your son's first assignment, to draw a picture of the supreme leader with rays of sunlight shining from behind his head. He used up the only yellow crayon in the house on those rays. He was so proud of it. You hung it on the wall for a few days, where it sat beneath the real portraits until it faded from the sun. Now, each day at school, your son recites ideological slogans, studies military victories, and watches state-made cartoons where heroic North Korean children outwit evil foreign villains. They read about South Korea as a starving wasteland full of beggars, and about Americans as monsters with blue eyes and claws. These images are not questioned. They are lessons. They are truth. Once a week, he and his classmates clean the statue of the great leader in the city square. They wipe the boots carefully, sweep the marble steps, and leave flowers. There is always someone watching. The teachers, of course, but also others. Ordinary citizens are expected to report children who don't show the proper reverence. Even the smallest sign of disrespect, a forgotten bow, a look of boredom, can bring serious consequences. Not just for the child, but for the family. Your son is part of the Young Pioneer Corps now, the children's political organization. He wears the red scarf proudly, not realizing that it is a symbol of indoctrination. The state calls it a flame of loyalty. You remember how proud you felt when you got yours. You remember also the day you were told to write a report on a classmate who whispered that he didn't want to salute the flag. You wrote the report, unsure if it would matter. The next week, he was gone. Children are taught to spy, not with malice, but with pride. Reporting wrong thinking is seen as a virtue. At home, at school, on the street, your son is expected to serve the state first, parents second. The state says it raises stronger citizens that way. Sometimes you worry that he will repeat something he overhears from you or your mother, even a small complaint about the food or the electricity or the cold. Not because he would do it to hurt you, but because he doesn't know better, because he's been taught that loyalty to the leader is the same thing as love. A few months ago, a boy in your son's class was taken away. No one explained why, but the adults whispered that his parents were caught with South Korean music. You don't know where the boy is now. No one says his name anymore. When you asked your son about it, he only said he wasn't loyal enough. And then he looked away, like even saying that much made him uneasy. You try to protect your son where you can. You tell him stories that focus on kindness, hard work, resilience. You teach him how to stay quiet when he's unsure, how to read a room, how to tell truth from safety. But there are limits. You cannot teach him to question too much. You cannot tell him the full truth about the world. That would endanger both of you. He once asked you what the outside looked like beyond the mountains, beyond the sea. You told him it was beautiful. That was safe enough to say. You didn't tell him about the defectors who risk everything to escape. You didn't tell him about the cities in the south lit up like stars, or the streets full of color, or the students laughing without fear of being watched. You didn't tell him about freedom. He's too young to carry that weight. After dinner, he pulls out a small booklet and begins copying sentences from the collected writings of Kim Jong-un. It's part of his homework. You sit with him in silence, watching the pencil move steadily across the page. Occasionally, he looks up and asks how to spell a word like loyalty or immortality. You answer softly. You know them all by heart. Later, when he's asleep beneath a thin blanket, you tuck his small scarf under his pillow and kiss his forehead. You watch him for a long time in the dark. He breathes evenly, still untouched by doubt. You wonder what kind of man he'll grow up to be. Will he believe what he's been taught? Will he ever see the truth? Will he come to resent you for the things you didn't say? Or will he learn, like you did, to carry two minds, one public and one private, and survive that way year after year? As the night deepens, the neighborhood loudspeaker begins playing the evening anthem, the same song every night. You sit by the window and listen, the music washing through the stillness like fog. And you remind yourself, he is still young, still safe for now. The next morning begins like the others, with silence, followed by sound you didn't choose. You wake before the light breaks, wrapped in your worn blanket, and listen as the voice from the wall-mounted radio begins to rise. It's the same every day, a woman's voice, clear and commanding, announcing another triumph, another slogan, another reminder. You don't turn it on, it's always on. You don't tune the station, it cannot be changed. You can lower the volume, yes, but never fully mute it. It was installed years ago by government technicians, bolted to the wall like a permanent presence. Our respected Marshal Kim Jong-un visited the heroic workers of the Ryan Song Machine Complex yesterday. You sit up, stretch your arms, and listen with half your mind. The other half drifts toward your son, still sleeping, toward the water buckets that need filling, toward the market and the factory and the endless rotation of needs. But the broadcast brings you back. You hear your leader's name again. You murmur the automatic phrase, "Thank you, respected Marshal." You do not believe everything the radio says, but you also do not disbelieve it, not aloud, not in your posture, not even in your eyes. You've grown up in a country where information is not discovered, it is delivered. You don't ask what's true, you ask what's allowed. Every morning, the same 3 newspapers arrive at the local distribution center. Rodong, Sinmun, Minju, Chosun, and Chongyangyan Janwi. All 3 carry the same lead story, often word for word. You read them when you're required, especially during group study sessions at work. The front pages always feature photos of the supreme leader inspecting a new facility, guiding farmers, smiling among soldiers, or offering on-the-spot guidance to factories. There are never stories of crime, never stories of failure, never even natural disasters, unless they serve as proof of resilience. Everything published in the papers passes through multiple layers of censorship. Even a misplaced comma in a quote from the leader could result in punishment for the editor. When you were a child, you believed everything you read. Why wouldn't you? There were no other sources. You were taught that Western media was filled with lies, that South Korean television was propaganda designed to poison your mind. If someone was caught with a USB drive full of South Korean shows, they could be sentenced to years of hard labor, or worse. You remember the first time you saw a foreign film, a Chinese martial arts movie, blurry and silent, on a friend's smuggled DVD player. You were 17. It was the first time you saw a man eat in a restaurant, tip a waiter, and laugh without caution. No slogans, no portraits, no mention of the great leader. It felt unreal, like fiction, like a dream, and yet something inside you stirred. Now, years later, you know there's more out there. You've seen flashes of it. A neighbor's cousin who defected, a worn magazine page hidden under a map, a South Korean pop song overheard in the alleyways near the market, but none of it is safe. You remember when the crackdown intensified, when the Ministry of State Security began using fake USBs loaded with tracking software planted in the Jangmadong to catch curious buyers. You heard of a teenager who shared a South Korean drama with his friends. One of them reported him to their teacher. He and his parents were never seen again. The government calls it ideological infection. Foreign culture is seen not just as disobedience, but as treason, a threat to national purity, a tool of the enemy. Watching or listening is not just forbidden, it is condemned as betrayal. And so, most of the time, you pretend the outside world doesn't exist. During your midday break, your work unit gathers for a news review session. The manager hands out printed articles from Rodong Sinmun. One of them describes an alleged crisis in South Korea, homeless children begging for food, old people living in boxers, American soldiers abusing civilians. You read the article out loud to your group. You nod solemnly. You add a comment about how fortunate you are to live in the most dignified nation on earth. This, too, is performance, not just for the manager, but for your coworkers, any of whom could report you if you seemed suspicious, if your tone was too flat, if your eyes looked doubtful. Everyone knows the drill. You read, you nod, you praise, then you go back to work. In the evening, when you visit the market, you pass a man whispering quietly to a woman near the back stalls. He opens his coat for a moment. You see the glint of plastic, a flash drive. Just a second, that's all. She nods and hands him a crumpled bill. You keep walking. You don't look. You don't speak. But your heart races a little. You know what that flash drive might hold? Music, movies, a glimpse of another world. A world where people choose what to believe, where truth isn't rationed like rice. Sometimes you wonder what the truth really is. You know that South Korea isn't the hellscape your newspapers describe. You've seen photos, bright lights, smiling faces, food piled on store shelves like decoration. Is it perfect? Probably not, but it's free. That much you know. And you wonder, if people knew the truth here, would anything change? Then you remember the other truth. Knowing is dangerous. Sharing is worse. Even thinking too freely can be risky. You've learned to live with two minds, the one you show and the one you bury. Before bed, your mother turns on the TV, a black and white model powered by a car battery. There's only one channel. A propaganda film is playing, something about heroic soldiers repelling an American invasion. The characters speak in stiff slogans. The music swells during scenes of sacrifice. You've seen it before. They play it often. Your son sits beside her, watching wide-eyed. He asks if American children really eat snow for dinner. You tell him that's what the newspaper says, and he nods. Later, when he's asleep, you sit by the window and look at the dark skyline. Beyond the mountains, you know there are cities glowing with neon, streets full of voices, people arguing, laughing, choosing. You wonder what it would feel like to choose your information, to turn a page and not know what it would say. But here, the news always knows what to say. It tells you what to think. It reminds you what to fear. It assures you what to love. You tell yourself that's enough. You have to. Because in this place, the truth doesn't set you free. It gets you watched. It gets you punished. Or worse, it gets you remembered. Evening comes without ceremony. The sun drops quickly behind the hills, and the city darkens just as fast. You're used to it. Chongjin's skyline isn't lit up like those cities you've heard about. Seoul, Shanghai, Tokyo, where night means color and light and motion. Here, night is mostly silence and shadow. You walk home slowly, careful not to trip on the uneven pavement. There are few working streetlights in this part of town, and the ones that flicker do so dimly, casting more gloom than guidance. You know the path well, though your feet memorize it after so many years. Past the broken sign for the old cinema, past the concrete wall with peeling posters of soldiers charging across imaginary battlefields, past the alley where the stray dogs sometimes scavenge for food just like you do. Your stomach tightens with every step. It's not just the usual emptiness. Today has been worse. You had only that bowl of cornmeal at lunch, and nothing since. There was no time, no energy, no extra food. And now, with nightfall, the ache returns. Familiar, dull, persistent. You remember when it wasn't like this. At least, not always. There were times, not long ago, when you had more to eat. When your mother received her full ration from the state distribution center. Rice, sometimes meat, even oil or sugar during holidays. But that system collapsed a long time ago. Now, ration cards are almost worthless, and the state warehouses are often empty. The official explanation is always the same. Temporary distribution, delays, natural disasters, or acts of American sabotage. But you know the truth is simpler. There's just not enough. Now, like most people, your family survives through the market, not the official stores. Those are mostly empty shelves and indifferent clerks. But the Jangmadang, the unofficial black market where real food, real clothing, and sometimes even real medicine can be found, if you can afford it. But today, you couldn't afford much. You earned a few thousand won at the factory, but the prices have jumped again. A single kilogram of rice now costs more than your entire weekly salary. Corn is slightly cheaper, but not by much. You traded some worn clothes for 2 potatoes, and those will have to stretch between you and your mother. Inside your apartment, the smell of boiled greens barely reaches the front room. Your mother sits on the floor, fanning the embers in the charcoal stove. She looks up, gives you a tired smile, and motions for you to sit. The pot is small. You both already know it won't be enough. She ladles the soup into 2 chipped bowls. It's mostly water, tinted green from cabbage leaves and wild grass she foraged outside the city last week. There are tiny pieces of tofu, but barely enough to taste. No rice, no meat. Not tonight. You say nothing. You eat in silence. Your mother used to apologize for the food. She doesn't anymore. There's no need. Hunger is normal now, not just in your home, but across your neighborhood, your city, your country. Everyone is hungry, some worse than others. You've seen children picking through garbage near the train station, gathering corn husks and discarded roots. You've heard about entire families foraging in the hills for acorns and tree bark. In the countryside, people talk about grinding up grass, even corn stalks, and mixing them with clay to stretch their meals. You've tasted that kind of bread before. It turns to paste in your mouth, chalky and wrong, but it fills the stomach for a little while. You were a child during the arduous march in the 1990s. You remember the hollow-eyed neighbors, the funerals without coffins, the rows of abandoned houses. Your father once told you that he saw people trading spoons of rice for a place in a train car, not to escape, just to travel somewhere with better rumors. You remember waking one morning and hearing that the family across the hall was gone, all of them starved. no one dared knock on their door. Back then, people died in the streets. Now, things are different, but only just. The government allows a little more black market activity now, lets people hustle and trade and sell so they don't starve outright. They call it self-reliance, but everyone knows it's survival. You've sold things to old shoes, broken radios, hand-woven baskets, scraps of plastic. Once, you traded a precious family heirloom, a locket from your grandmother, for 3 eggs and a lump of dried noodles. You never told your mother. She still thinks it's hidden in the drawer. After dinner, your mother tries to distract you by talking about a neighbor's birthday. The woman down the hall is turning 60 tomorrow. There will be no party, but someone managed to get a bottle of homemade liquor. You nod politely, but your thoughts are drifting. You think of food constantly, not just out of hunger, but out of memory. You remember your first taste of chocolate, a gift from a visiting Chinese trader long ago. You didn't even know what it was at first. You sucked on it for an hour, not wanting it to end. The memory is so vivid, it feels like something forbidden. You've heard stories of South Korean supermarkets, entire buildings filled with food, rows and rows of fruits and vegetables, meats and desserts, things you can't even name. Once, someone whispered about walking into a store and seeing pineapples. You've never seen a pineapple in real life. You're not even sure what they taste like. At night, you sometimes dream of food, steamed dumplings, golden and hot, a bowl of white rice, sticky and fragrant. Even something as simple as a ripe tomato, split open with juice running down your fingers. You wake with your mouth watering, only to find the same bowl of cabbage soup waiting. Your son has learned not to ask for more. He eats what is given, thanks his grandmother, and goes to bed without complaint. But once, a few weeks ago, he asked you, "When will we eat like the people in the movies?" You didn't know how to answer, so you just said, "Someday." You lie to protect him, not just from hunger, but from knowing it isn't normal. Before you sleep, you check the cupboard one more time. 2 potatoes, a handful of cornmeal, a bag of salt. That's it. You tell yourself it's enough. Tomorrow, maybe the neighbor will trade some beans. Maybe the factory will give out bonuses, not money, but flour or oil. You climb into bed, stomach hollow, body tired. The cold creeps in through the window cracks. You pull the blanket tight and curl your legs to conserve heat. Your mother has already fallen asleep. Her breathing is slow and quiet, and you lie there, listening to the wind outside, thinking not of dreams or hope, but of bread. Because in this place, hunger never truly ends. It recedes and returns like a tide. It hums under the surface of every conversation, every decision, every prayer you don't say aloud. You close your eyes and wait for the next meal. You wake before the first sound from the neighborhood loudspeaker. The early hours are the only time the world feels still, before the slogans return, before the commands and duties begin. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, listening to your own breath, and you allow yourself something rare. You let yourself think, not about breakfast or work or rations, not about loyalty or self-criticism sessions or the party. You think about what ifs. It's dangerous, even in your own head, but you do it anyway. You imagine a different life, not loud, not luxurious, just free. A quiet apartment where the walls don't listen. A job you chose. A bowl of rice whenever you wanted it. A world where your son can ask a question without first checking your eyes. You don't tell anyone about these dreams. Of course not. You don't even speak them to yourself in full sentences. You've trained your mind to censor itself before your mouth ever needs to. But still, the dreams come, in pieces, in flashes. You once dreamed of being a teacher, not a propaganda instructor, not a mouthpiece for ideology, a real teacher, someone who reads books that aren't filled with state slogans, someone who asks students what they think and means it. You loved reading when you were young. You devoured the few books available, most of them about revolutionary heroes or speeches by the leaders. You read between the lines, searching for something deeper, something true. You remembered the day you asked your instructor if the stories in your textbooks were the only stories that existed. Her face froze. She said nothing for a long time. Then she told you to see her after class. You apologized before she could speak again. She never reported you, but she never looked at you the same after that. That was the last time you asked a real question out loud. Now, you read only what is handed to you. And still, late at night, the dreams return. Your mother dreamed once too of owning a shop, selling fruit in the open market, with enough to eat and spare. She's older now, more careful. She tells you it's best not to want too much. Wanting leads to thinking, and thinking leads to trouble, she says. But sometimes, when she looks at your son, you see it in her eyes, that old spark. She wants something more for him, even if she's stopped wanting it for herself. Your son, he doesn't know how dangerous dreams are yet. That's what frightens you most. He still talks about becoming a pilot, not a soldier, a civilian pilot, flying between countries. He asks questions. What do clouds feel like? Do cities look like stars from above? Can someone fly to South Korea and back in a day? You answer as best you can, without saying too much. You steer his thoughts toward safer dreams, becoming a doctor, a factory technician, a scientist for the party. He nods, but you can tell his heart is already flying away from here, even if his feet are still on the ground. You want to protect him, but you don't want to smother him. You know the state will begin doing that soon enough. Already, his teachers ask questions in class meant to test political loyalty. Already, he's learning to report minor rule breaking to earn praise. It's subtle at first, then sudden. One day you're a child, the next day you're a citizen of the regime. You think of a boy you knew in secondary school, Jinyuk, smart, curious, funny and private, but always guarded in public. He used to draw maps, imaginary ones, of cities with curved buildings and blue glass towers. He would show you with a shy grin, saying, "One day, I'll live somewhere like this." One morning, he didn't come to class. The teacher told you he'd been transferred to a work brigade in the countryside. Later, you heard whispers that his older brother had defected. That was enough. Songbun is inherited. One person's wrong thinking stains the whole family. You never saw Jinyuk again. But you remember those maps. Sometimes, in the quiet of your room, you try to redraw them from memory. You imagine streets where people can walk freely, cafes with music spilling out of open windows, bookstores with shelves taller than you. Then you close your eyes and put the image away. This morning, as you gather your things for work, you glance at your son's drawings on the wall. Most are of soldiers and tanks, flags and fireworks, the kind encouraged by school contests. But tucked between them is a crayon sketch of a mountain and a bird in the sky. You stop and look at it for a long time. He's never seen a mountain from the air. He's never seen a bird fly that high, but he drew it anyway. You wonder if he dreams too, in pieces, in colors, in quiet disobedience. Maybe he doesn't even know he's doing it. Maybe that's the safest way to dream. You leave the apartment and step into the street. The loudspeakers are on now, playing a military march. Workers move in silent lines toward factories. School children walk in formation, red scarves neatly tied. Today you'll attend another political lecture. You'll nod as the instructor quotes the supreme leader. We must not allow poisonous thoughts to infect our pure socialist consciousness. You'll take notes, you'll say the slogans, you'll keep your voice steady and your thoughts invisible. But later, maybe tonight, maybe in your dreams, you'll return to the mountain, to the sky, to the bird. And for a moment, you'll allow yourself what is forbidden, not to flee, not to speak, just to imagine. Because here, that alone is a rebellion. Night doesn't fall in North Korea the way it does in other countries. It doesn't descend gently or sparkle with neon or street lamps. It simply arrives like a curtain pulled shut, fast and final. You step outside your apartment for a moment, standing on the narrow balcony that overlooks the back of your building. The city is already dark. From here, you can make out the outlines of other housing blocks, quiet and still. A few windows glow dimly, those who managed to get their hands on a charged car battery or solar lamp. But mostly, it's black. You look up, the stars shine clearly tonight. There's no light pollution to mask them. It should feel beautiful, but it doesn't, because you know what this darkness means. It means cold. It means silence. It means power outages that lasts for days. It means your city, once proud and industrial, now disappears at night like a ghost. You go back inside. Your son is asleep already, curled up beneath a stack of quilts. He's wearing his school uniform even in bed, because it's one of the few warm layers he has. You haven't had electricity in 3 days now. The small charcoal stove in the corner is out. You're saving the last of the fuel for morning. Your mother is still awake, sitting on the floor, wrapping a scarf around her thin shoulders. She whispers a few words to you about how the pipes might freeze overnight. You nod and check the basin to see how much water is left. Not much. You'll need to carry more tomorrow. This is how nights go here. Slowly, carefully, quietly. There's no television to distract you. No music to fill the air. No books you haven't already read dozens of times. There's only routine and the ever-present feeling that someone might be listening, even through the walls. Tonight, like most nights, there's a mandatory Senwell Chonghua, the self-criticism session. Yours is held with a small group of coworkers in the basement of your apartment building. Attendance is never questioned. To skip would be to invite suspicion. You walk down in the dark, your feet moving by memory. The stairwell is narrow, and you feel your way along the wall. Downstairs, others are already gathered. You greet them with a nod. No one smiles. These meetings are not about friendship. They are performances, meant to display ideological purity and collective discipline. The unit leader begins with a quote from the supreme leader. Even in darkness, the light of our resolve must shine bright. You've heard it before. You'll hear it again. One by one, your neighbors speak. A woman apologizes for oversleeping and missing a propaganda study hour. A man admits to feeling lazy thoughts after lunch. Another says he forgot to repeat the daily slogans with his son. When your turn comes, you say something harmless, that you were slow at work yesterday. But upon rereading the Marshall's speech on revolutionary productivity, you corrected your mindset. The leader nods, someone claps once, that's enough. The session ends, and you file back upstairs, each person disappearing into their own apartment, into their own silence. Back in your room, your mother has already laid out the sleeping mats. The room is cold, and the floor feels like stone under your feet. You wrap yourself in your coat and lie down next to your son. His breathing is slow and even. You listen to it for a while, and then, once again, the voices in your head return. Not real voices, not from outside, from within. Questions, thoughts, memories you're not allowed to say aloud. You think about the time you saw the skyline of Seoul in a smuggled photo. It looked like a city made of stars. You remember wondering what it would feel like to walk those streets at night without fear, to speak freely, to think freely. Here, even the dark listens. You know this because you've seen what happens to those who speak. Years ago, there was a man who lived down the street, a retired factory engineer. He was respected, even admired. One day, he made a joke, barely a whisper, about the power cuts. Just a joke. The next morning, he was gone. People said he was taken to a re-education center. Others said it was worse. His wife moved away 2 months later. His apartment stayed empty for a year. Now someone else lives there, and no one mentions his name. Everyone understands. Forgetting is part of survival. You close your eyes, trying to sleep. The cold makes it difficult. The hunger makes it worse. But more than anything, it's the thoughts, the dreams you're not allowed to have that keep you awake. You want to imagine a future for your son, but even that is dangerous. You don't know what he'll be allowed to become. The system decides. The songbun defines him already. You've done everything you can to protect him, followed every rule, obeyed every order. But that won't be enough. It never is. Be loyal. Be careful. You've said those same things to yourself for so many years now that they feel like a lullaby. A dull, cautious lullaby for a country that sleeps with one eye open. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the crackle of a loudspeaker fading into static. The day is finally over, and tomorrow it will begin again, exactly the same. You'll rise before the sun. You'll clean the portraits. You'll say the slogans. You'll go to work, not by choice, but because there's no other option. You'll thank the leader for every breath you take. But in the quiet spaces between the marching, the nodding, the hunger, you'll dream. Not loudly, not carelessly, but quietly, secretly, carefully. And resistance, even in darkness, is a kind of light.